often asked about stand locations and stand height, stand placement. And one of the more, I don't want to say debated, but topics all that we see as not only as consultants that people are asking, but also just hunters in general. I mean, before I was doing this full time, maybe I even asked myself this a time or two: what is the perfect stand height? Not placement, not the area that we're talking now. What we're talking about, stand height. And I'm gonna answer this because I don't like roundabout answers. So I'm gonna answer this what my feeling is. And the easiest way that I can answer that, guys, is it has to fit that location. One, it has to fit you. So let's start there. It has to fit you as a hunter. If you're not comfortable in that stand location, whether it's too low and you don't feel comfortable because you're not able to maneuver the way that you want to maneuver, so that includes cover on the tree, that includes height, whatever that is, you don't feel comfortable. Low setting. Secondly, it also goes for being not comfortable because it's too high. Now, some people don't experience, can go many sits in the stand many years and never experience vertigo. And you crawl in the stand one day and bam, guess what? You've got vertigo. I can speak for that firsthand. A couple of years back, I've never had it, obviously dating back to my days of guiding that I always, refer back to, hanging and being involved in 250 tree stands a year, up and down. And so I never had an issue. I was the guy that I had to coach myself into the proper harnesses and everything, and so I could, relay that to my guides and everything that came with that, friends, families, whatever. And I never had an issue. One day 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, before during my back injury, I don't know if it was a medication issue or what I had going on, but I was not comfortable by any means, and trying to stay in the stand. And it was right before, so it would have been the winter before my surgery. And got up in the stand, and boy, I had vertigo, like bad vertigo. So ended up hunting on the ground that night, and ever since then I don't get it nearly as bad, but there's signs of it every now and then, and it just makes it more aware that I have to get, the safety factor is bumped up, and I really pay attention to that now. But I was one of those guys that didn't have to have it. I didn't worry about it, and I've never been higher the better. I've had clients, come to hunt my stand locations, dating back to Illinois, down in Wisconsin, all over the country, and even out in Wyoming, and showing up, and we're like, we're from the south, and we don't hunt anything under 30 feet. Well, I learned very fast that there's no perfect set height on a stand, and I've had guys that aren't used to hunting out of anything under 30 feet killed deer out of 12-foot stands in Kansas. And I've had guys, been with guys there that have done that, and then I've had guys in Wyoming's a perfect example, where you take the best situation that you can get. So that might be 18 feet, that might be 12 feet, that might be 10 foot. Kansas is one of those states where a lot of those tree stands you can reach up and touch the platform. Well, I'm here to tell you there's been giant deer killed time and time again out of 10-foot stands. And why is that? And I strongly feel is that fit the location. It fit the purpose, it fit the location, and we as hunters just have to adapt to that. So just a couple points there that I want to make is, one, the safety factor. Two is the terrain. Has to fit the terrain. Here's a perfect example where I'm accessing from down below on this up this trail, and all the deer movement is over the crown of the hill on this stand location. So I'm getting in there undetected, and so, but I am off the top of this ridge, just about I'm about 12 yards from the crown of this hogback ridge, and then everything go over it, and it's it's not steep, but it drops off rather quick. The reason I do that, though, is the reason that the stand location is here, so I can get in undetected. But when you aren't on the top of a ridge, which I often recommend with stand placement, is it puts you down lower. So the higher, you have to go just a little bit higher to make sure that you are not, when those deer are coming up from below, they're not walking up a grade and their line of sight is not right at you. But that ties into stand placement. You have to get off the side of line of travel, and eyesight, line of sight, is because you don't want to be, you shouldn't, if you can at all help it, and that's why I, teach and preach and practice here with you, the ways to put those stand locations in a spot that's not in those line of travel, line of sight things. That's how you stay out of that issue. But this situation here is a perfect example. My water hole, my licking branch, is on the top of the ridge where it should be, but my stand is just 12 yards off the peak of the ridge, the crown of the ridge here, and my stand location in this spot is, so you can see this one here, I've got let's see, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got all 5 on this. I've got all 5, so I've got 20 foot of stick here. And you can see, as I've talked to you guys before, is I like running those sticks all the way up past the stand, safe. I even go, if I get 16 footers, hopefully I'd recommend getting 20 footers. But you can see that that's 20 foot to the top of that stand, and I'm down. The seat is at the 4 foot mark. So however you want to gauge that, whether it's 16 foot to the seat. But that's high enough to get me over the line of sight here, feel comfortable in the stand, and I'm able to get in and out of it. And the thing is, guys, is it has to be easy to get in and out of. The stand height is one thing, getting in and out of it, and that's a separate video. But noise factor, if it's the top of a spot where 16 foot would do, and you try to make it 20, and then that's when accidents happen, and that's, you're making noise. It doesn't need to happen. And it when you're the mature deer that you're after, in some locations is 2.5 or 3.5, you may get away with that. But in areas that are coming on strong here in the hunting world, which I'm happy to see, these farms are, boy, there's 2020, and you've heard me say that before. This season's going to be pretty powerful. But with that said, you're not going to get away with that with 4.5, 5.5-year-old deer. And if you get away with it once, it won't happen twice. So this set is a perfect example. There's just not that perfect. I cannot tell my clients that all of your stands should be at 12 or 16 feet, and you will or will not get busted. And the reason that is I fit these. Last week was a perfect example. I was actually ribboned off, and it was hanging some stands with a client, and some stand locations that I had ribboned off on an analysis package, and then went back in consulting with him and hanging those stands, and we did hang 4. That was an 80, and I hung 4 stands with him, and 2 of those were 16 footers. One was 18, one was 20. We had to add a screw in step above it to hang on the top of that 20 foot, so hand grips to step down into the stand. So that was around the 20 foot mark. So I'm not a 30 foot guy, because the reason is, guys, there's probably, because of terrain, there's probably some locations where you can go 30 feet in the stand, and it doesn't affect your angle. But the point of impact on these stand locations with archery equipment now, outside of this spectrum, is gun. And there is a little play that's in there, but not nearly as much as our world in bow hunting. So that direct line from point A being you in the stand to point B being the deer has to be correct. We're trying to do this ethical, and when you get 30 feet up on flat ground, you're now if you can shoot 50 yards effectively, then maybe that angle isn't as bad. But when you're 30 feet in the stand and you're in that 20, 25, you're hanging licking branches like I recommend that we do, and it's at 27 yards. I mean, it's the angle, I'm not exactly sure what that angle is, but and that angle will change because of contour as well, but it's steep, and that's when, you know, one lung, no zone shots end up happening. But you guys know your situation's better. You guys know what's worked for you in the past. This is just a question that that I get asked quite often, and just today out grabbing a card here while I had time between raindrops here, and wanted to pull the card, and I've got some issues, formatting issues going on with some of my cards, but off topic there. But I just wanted to touch on that, guys, is there's just no perfect set number. There's really not. I just, you know, encourage you to use your contour, make sure that your line of sight, you know, early season, if you're able to do this, like we said, you know, put these guys on somebody else on the ground, your son, your daughter, your hunting partner, your wife, whatever that is, and have them walk up there. And if their line of sight, I mean, obviously I'm 6'6", and my line of sight's higher than a deer, but if you're walking up a ridge and it's like, you know, you can be seen now and your line of sight is pretty impacted, and then when you drop that, you know, backdrop and that foliage is gone, you're going to be skylined. All that plays into it. Now in that situation, you know, dropping the stand sometimes 4 feet will keep you in the backdrop of a conifer, will keep you, you know, tighter behind a red oak. All that plays into it. So I'm a guy that you know, says that there's no one set stand location. I just want to see, the number one thing is, guys, is if you tell me that you're comfortable at 30 feet in that stand at that location, and your angle is correct at 30 feet, by all means hunt it. But if you're a guy like myself that has experienced vertigo, and it's a spooky deal, it makes you think in a hurry, and the problem is when you find that, you're in the stand, and you have to, it takes that vertigo just doesn't go away, and there's only one way to get out of the stand. That's down the ladder, and that happens even in a ladder stand, you know. So so keep that in mind, the safety side of it, and then the ethical side of it tied in there too. But then tie all that into, like I said, I'm not here to tell guys that hunt low are wrong, or guys that hunt high. I'm just here to tell you that you have to make sure that it's safe, ethical, and those line of sight, so you don't get picked off. Move them down, move them up, whatever you got to do. Fit it to the terrain, and make it comfy. And that's the success timeline of a successful tree stand, if you ask me. There's a lot of variables in that, just a couple things that I wanted to tie to it. So the next time that you're questioning, or you reach out to me and ask me, hey, what is the perfect stand height? I'm gonna ask you if I've been on the property. Actually, we can obviously refer to that stand location, but if you ask me that, I'm going to ask you where it's at. Is it, which side of the ridge is it on? How are you accessing it? You know, how far below the ridge top are you? Like, this is 12 yards off the top of the ridge, but there's 6 foot difference. So that means that my stand might be at 16 foot there, but I'm 10 foot above that ridge. But as you can see that I've got here, is I've got a whole bunch of beach in front of me, and I've got quite the backdrop. Now there's a hole here, but I'm standing right underneath it. So when you go out in front of the, actually I'll do that while we're talking. Go out in front of the stand here to kind of give you a perspective. But so 12 yards, 12 yards, got a nice trail coming right down the top of the ridge here. As you can see, this is the stand right here, right there. The bottom is all covered up by beach. Actually looking forward to the stand location this year, but as I'm going by, I'm at 10 yards of the stand right now, and that backdrop is still pretty good. And at this close, I'm going to lose some backdrop and be skylined a little bit. But that's why it's in that tree, is that tree is shoulder width, so I shouldn't have any problems. But now we go down below this, and won't be too much walking down here. The stand location is pretty set, but other than filling water hole. But now you can see I'm down below, coming up on a deer's perspective. But in this situation, this is the height of the stand, 12 foot off the top of that ridge. Now I'm down, so now I'm down further. But in this situation, that's not the line of sight of this deer. I'm not, these trails, I'm not walking the trail that leads right up to that. This is the line of sight. So this is what they're looking at when they come up to the top of the ridge. And unless something's made or pops or squeaks or something like that, there's no reason for them to be looking this way anyway. Will they do it? Yes, they will. But especially surveying an area or coming up to a licking branch, you always have that mature buck's going to stop and you know, figure out in this little pocket of that behind me, you know, figure out what's in there, you know, or what's out in front of him. But that's the situation. So you can see, guys, how that's tucked in there, and you can see some of the discoloration of the stuff that I cut down already. But off the line of sight, it's just one of those points that there's no set height. Just safety first, and keep everybody safe. If we're not safe and you're not anything I can teach you doesn't as far as habitat improvement, and if you guys follow along, appreciate everybody. But if you don't get to the season or something happens and you're not able to sit in that stand, it doesn't matter how high it is. So be safe first, guys, and we'll go from there. Looking forward to the 2020 season.